The Western Conference this year has seen the most parity in a while, with a myriad of teams who are capable of winning the title, and it was represented in the results too, with the Warriors and Lakers both winning their first-round series as a lower seed. Despite the Denver Nuggets having the best record in the West and being dominant for much of the season, they were kinda disrespected. Everyone was talking about the Lakers or Warriors, or heck, even the Suns, teams with more recognizable names and star power who were expected to reach the finals, not the Nuggets. Heck, prior to the start of the second-round series between the Nuggets and Suns, every sportsbook had the Suns as the favorites to win that series. I will say, just like everyone else, I had my doubts on the Nuggets too. Everyone said stuff like, oh, how in the world are the Nuggets supposed to defend against the Suns' offense? Or how can the Nuggets defend Davis and the Lakers? But nobody stopped and thought, wait, how are any of these teams supposed to defend the Denver Nuggets? This is a team that, ever since Jokic got drafted, they've always been an elite offensive team. And this year, they've been even better. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy. And let's take a look at why the Denver Nuggets, as the best team in the West, was slept on before the playoffs even began. What made people doubt them? Jokic's defense. For basically Jokic's entire career, this has been the biggest knock on his game. When you compare him to the likes of Embiid or Giannis, the one thing that people always bring up is defense. I mean, you've probably heard so many times someone has said, oh, I'm definitely taking Embiid and Giannis over Jokic because of defense. But here are some numbers. In the regular season, when contesting shots between 5 and 9 feet, Jokic held his opponents to just 39.2% shooting. That's top 10 among all starting centers in the league. For comparison, from the same distance, Embiid held his opponents to 45.4%, although Embiid's a bit better at defending the rim below 5 feet. The Nuggets were also better defensively when Jokic was on the floor, by roughly 2.5 points per 100 possessions. It's not amazing by any stretch, but it means that he's not a liability. And another funny stat is his kick balls. He led the NBA in total kick balls with 47. The next closest player had 17. He got kinda clowned for this, but if you think about it, kick ball violations are basically like deflections. I mean, in most cases, it benefits the defending team to kick the ball, because the offense has to reset. And of course, the big one, pick and roll defense. Pick and roll defense has been the biggest knock on Jokic's defense. Literally, analysts and reporters were saying, oh, just run pick and roll against Jokic all the time and he can't stop it. But that's far from true. While this has been an area of weakness, in the 2023 playoffs, his opponents are scoring just 0.94 points per possession in the pick and roll against him. For comparison, among other big men, Bam Adebayo is allowing 0.91 points per possession in the pick and roll, and Al Horford 1.4 points per possession. Anthony Davis allows just 0.85. Embiid is at 0.92. Overall, Jokic is not as good as Adebayo or Davis at defending the pick and roll, but he's been quite good. This has been an area that he knows is his weakness, and he's gotten better at it, even if he's not an elite defender yet. For most of Jokic's career, his defense was a legitimate point of criticism, and it's fair to say that he doesn't have the same impact on defense as Giannis or Embiid. Obviously, Jokic is not an all-NBA defender, but he's been solid ever since he got into better shape. That's another thing. For a long time, everyone joked about Jokic's physique, or his endurance. But I feel like that's always been misguided because people judge him based on his appearance. However, years ago, he logged 65 minutes in a game, the most minutes in a single game since 1953. If you can play this much and be effective right till the very end, you don't have bad endurance. He has shown it in the playoffs too. In the second half and in the fourth quarter, he always closes out strong. And here's another cool stat in regards to his endurance. Out of everyone who played at least 10 playoff games this year, Jokic is 9th in miles per game. And the 8 guys ahead of him are all guards or wing players. So for a center to run this much and play this well, his endurance is actually fantastic. Recent postseasons. In the years that Jokic won MVP, in 2021 and 2022, the Nuggets got bounced early in the playoffs. They got swept by the Suns and then lost in 5 to the Warriors. The critics of Jokic were quite loud at this point. Like, has any back-to-back MVP lost this early in 2 straight postseasons? Perhaps not, but Jokic, as an individual, he was phenomenal. Yet the rest of his team was riddled with injuries to their main guys. Michael Porter Jr. missed basically all of 2022, and Jamal Murray missed both playoff runs. Considering they're the second and third best players on the roster, you can't expect Jokic to carry a bunch of scrubs, as great of a player he is. Porter and Murray just weren't healthy, and during those years, Will Barton was taking the second most shots per game in the playoffs. The team was starting dudes like Austin Rivers and Facundo Campazzo. They were getting close to 30 minutes a game in the 2021 playoffs. The supporting cast was god-awful, and health was the #1 reason for the Nuggets' lack of success. That's why, prior to this year's playoffs, in the mind of the average fan, everyone still thought of the Nuggets in the same way. A team that underachieved in the playoffs despite having a 2-time MVP. But they weren't looking at their situation or the context. They only cared that his team got knocked out early. It also didn't help that towards the end of the regular season this year, the Nuggets kinda took their foot off the pedal. They were slacking a little bit, they lost more games than they had hoped, and Jokic did have some poor performances. They didn't close out the season strong, and it was thought that, maybe their lackadaisical play would transition to the playoffs, but obviously that wasn't the case. For these reasons, that's why they were underrated. It's clear now that when healthy, and as their core reaches their prime, they've proved to be legitimately the best team in the conference. They're a true 1 seed. A lack of name recognition. The Western Conference is loaded with stars and superstars. LeBron and Davis, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, Steph Curry and the Warriors. It was stacked this year with superstar talent, recognizable names, most of whom have multiple championships under their belt. Before the playoffs started, all eyes were on those guys, despite their teams having a lower seed. Heck, the top 3 seeds this year were probably the least talked about. While the Nuggets do have their own superstar, Jokic is not exactly the flashiest guy out there. He doesn't have social media, he doesn't jump very high. Even with his 2 MVPs, most folks haven't seen him play until the Nuggets reached the conference finals and played the Lakers, because everyone watches the Lakers. And because of that, everyone saw Jokic. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the thought process was, well, look at all these stars on these teams. How are the Nuggets, who are a mediocre defensive team, supposed to stop these star-stacked rosters? But nobody asked the question the other way around. How's everyone supposed to stop Denver's dynamic offense, led by the best player in the NBA? No team thus far has had any answers to that. Even though Jokic is the lone superstar on the team, and, well, Jamal Murray always turns into a superstar in the playoffs too, even though he never made an all-star team. With his injury and missing the 2 previous playoffs, people forget how good he is. In fact, he's got the best point differential between the regular season and playoffs of any player throughout NBA history. The dude averages like 9 more points a game in the playoffs compared to the regular season. But even more impressive, his efficiency increases too. Higher volume and efficiency. Playoff Murray is a real thing, even if he doesn't have the name recognition of his peers. Additionally, they got a squad of very good players at every position that fit together perfectly. And that's very important for playoff success too. You need a well-rounded roster with few weaknesses, and the Nuggets have that. This Nuggets team has been the most dominant team in the playoffs so far. They have the best net rating, the lowest turnover rate, and top 2 in scoring efficiency. They also have the second best point differential in the 4th quarter, only trailing the Miami Heat. Let's see if they can continue this. The Nuggets were slept on entering the playoffs, but I think by now they've proven to everyone that they're the real deal. They're the favorites to win the title. All those doubters, all those critics, they've all shut up by now. This is a championship-level team, and they're here to stay in the foreseeable future. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.